Hello friend, thanks for joining me for another video blog. I hope this video finds you well, healthy, and thriving despite what's going on in the world right now. So in this video today, I want to talk about the ego because there's so much clashing of egos right now happening in the collective. And when I say collective, I mean people. Collect is basically the sum of us all. And if you just go into your Facebook or your social media channels or even the news, you're gonna see a lot of this happening right now. One side saying I'm right, the other side saying I'm right, this side criticizing this, that this is wrong, this side fighting even more and saying no, you're wrong. So the egos are getting very loud right now. So before I dive in, let's define first what the ego is. The ego is, think of the ego an aspect of us. You have it, I have it, and most people don't want to talk about egos because there's like this guilt or shame about acting out of our egos or being in our ego. We all do it. I lived, I would say, most of my life driven by my ego. And it wasn't until I started doing a lot of inner work, going to personal growth and spiritual development. It wasn't until then that's when I realized that I was driven by my ego. And that's normal. We start developing the ego at a very early age, 7, 8, 9 years old, when we start kind of, taking a little bit distance from our parents and trying to become more independent. And then we move into our teens and early 20s, and that's when the ego starts to get very strong, and it keeps getting stronger until the day that we realize that we are being driven by the ego and we start disidentifying with the ego. And you can call that personal growth and more spiritual development, the great awakening, right? So if you follow my posts or some other teacher's posts, you're gonna see there's a big conversation right now about using this pandemic as an opportunity of great collective awakening. So what does that mean? One of my, my viewers ask what this great awakening means. What it means is that we start disidentifying with these personalities, with these rigid beliefs that we've been carrying for so many years. We adopt values, beliefs, ideas from very early age. We start adopting from our caretakers, from our parents, then from teachers, from schools, from churches, from other agencies. And then because of the validation we get from the outside, every time we get validation from the outside, especially at a young age, you get validation, you feel important, you feel accepted, you get attention. That all those qualities strengthen the personalities of the ego. So personality of the ego, for example, is this sense of like always having to achieve, being a high achiever that is never satisfied, is always going for more, for more, for more. So that's out of balance, egotistic personality. I was there. Nothing to be ashamed or guilty about. We need to start having these conversations about our ego because the process of awakening is a process to kind of take a step back and watch ourselves in our ego action. Think that the ego is where we get rigid in our beliefs or behaviors. We are very driven by image. We're driven by material, by form. We also adopt fixed mindsets. So a fixed mindset is a quality of an unhealthy ego. And it's also the sense of not enough. It's always that sense of like, I need more. I need to buy more. I need to have more status. I need more validation. So an unhealthy ego is never satisfied, ever. The ego is constantly living either in the past or in the future. The ego is very limited because it identifies only with the past. All the information that the ego carries is based on the past. And when the ego is in the future, the ego is always projecting negativity, because negativity actually is juice. It's food for the ego. The ego is fed by negativity and suffering. That's why there are a lot of people, forgive me to say that, there are a lot of people who do not want to do the inner work. They don't want to work with a therapist. They don't want to work with a coach. They don't want to go to the seminars or read the books. They don't want to do the work because that actually is threatening to the ego. The ego wants to preserve all the old beliefs, the old wounds, the times that you got hurt, that you felt life was unfair with you. The ego wants you to keep carrying the baggage because it's very familiar. It gives the ego a tremendous sense of control. So when we have a lot of need for control and certainty, we are in our egos because it's the ego that is seeking for that. Remember, the ego is either living in the past or in the future, never in the present. The ego does not want you to become enlightened. The ego does not want you to become a more spiritual person. The main emotion that feeds the ego is fear, and therefore negativity. So anytime, for example, this is another aspect of the ego, anytime you feel yourself being superior or inferior compared to somebody else, that's the ego. The ego might say, I am the smartest person in this room. The ego might also say, I am the most stupid person in this room. So either when you are like elevating, inflating yourself, or kind of putting yourself down, those two qualities are also the ego. So you can be super cocky, or you can also be very insecure. Both qualities of the ego. This is what I want to say to you. To start breaking down this forms of the ego. You are not your behavior. You are not your past, meaning the past doesn't define who you are. Circumstances, of course, influence us. But there's a big difference between influencing and make who you are. A lot of people walk around saying, this is who I am. That's a fixed mindset. You are not your behaviors. You are not your thoughts. You are not even your emotions. That means you are very flexible. We have the power to be extremely malleable and flexible. So the process of awakening means we start taking a stand and understand, observing from here, from back here, like your ego is here and your higher consciousness, your higher self is back here, and you start watching, this is an interesting behavior. This is an interesting thought that my ego is having. This is an interesting feeling that my body is experiencing right now. You become more the observer and you start kind of watching yourself. This leads to the second aspect of awakening. In order to be part of this great process of awakening, you need to become aware and live in the present moment, like watching yourself in this present moment. And with that, also choose who you want to be at this present moment. How do you want to show up? How do you want to show up when you go have dinner with your friends that have different ideas than you do? Or even if you have the same idea. Do you want to sit at the table and talk about others and how wrong they are? So awareness is key in this process of great awakening. The great awakening simply means that you choose to start living more from a higher consciousness place, from your higher self, or we can say from your essence. In the essence, there's no ego. In the essence is who we are in our hearts, and we are the same. In our essence, we are pure love, we are joy, we are abundance, we are peace. We can live in a state of just presence and always experience that stability and steadiness inside us, what I call home, a place of home, joy, peace, love, freedom. It doesn't mean you won't experience turbulences like anger, sadness, depression, whatever it is you are. But once you start understanding that those are just experiences, temporary experiences that you are having, and you have a practice, or you work with me, or you work with another coach or spiritual teacher or a great therapist, you start learning that you are not your ego. You are not any personality. Think of personalities like this shirt that I can take it off anytime and put a different shirt. You're not stuck with your personalities, okay? So other part of process of awakening is to decide, who do you want to be? You don't need to be anymore the person that your father or your mother wanted to be, or the person that needed to fit in or to belong. Those were strategies that we developed as kids, as teenagers. We no longer need to live with that state of protection, being afraid of being ourselves. So you can think also the process of Great Awakening is the process of you going back, returning to your heart and exploring who you truly are underneath all these personalities, all these masks, right? The ego is made of status, of image, of form, of fixed behaviors, fixed personalities, fixed beliefs. And if you want to live in that state, that's totally fine. It's your choice. Just know that if you choose to be in that state that's more fixed, you are being driven by the ego. And there's a whole new level where we start tapping into possibilities, into potential, into the field. And that's the place that is opposite from living in the ego, because in the ego, everything is limited. Again, it's based on your past experiences. It's based on what you know. When you start stepping into the unknown, into uncertainty, and that's when the adventure really begins, that's the opposite of the ego. The ego needs familiarity and control. And we know well that a life that is control and familiar all the time is a dull life. You're not growing. You're not evolving. You actually, in a sense, dying in that state because you're not allowing yourself, your soul to evolve and to start experiencing life in a much richer way, what I call creating heaven on earth, despite of the circumstances that are happening outside. We don't know when the circumstances are going to change, when they're going to end, and we cannot hold our evolution. We cannot hold or put on hold our states of joy, peace, love, freedom, because of what's happening in the world. Because right now it's a pandemic. What is going to be next year, what's going to be in 10 years, is going to be something else. So when you start breaking free from your ego, you start also breaking free from these limitations. You don't allow anything to limit you anymore. And that's true freedom. Freedom is inner work. My freedom is not dependent on what the government decides to do or what my county decides to do with put mask or no mask. It doesn't matter. I'm free. Either with a mask or without a mask, it doesn't matter. So, join this process of awakening. Start doing some work where you recognize what is being driven by your ego. Remember again, the main emotion that feeds the ego, it's fear. Also, the quality of negativity. If you catch yourself complaining a lot, being negative a lot, just know that that is fuel for the ego, which is this, smaller part of us. You can call this small self. And then we have the higher self, which is our essence. It's the part that we truly connect with the divine, with the field, with God, whatever you want to call, with the universe. That's when we can meet more from our hearts. Doesn't matter what the beliefs and ideas, what your ego believes. When we meet in the hearts, we are all the same. That doesn't mean I don't stand for certain beliefs. I still do. I know who I am. I know what I stand for. That's the healthy relationship with the ego. Know who you are, know what you stand for. That's healthy. What becomes unhealthy is when you start comparing and making others less or more than you because of your thoughts, of your behaviors, your emotions. So that's what I want to share with you. I will be sharing more videos this month about the ego because that's a big conversation and that's something that I help my clients with a lot. So if you're interested in understanding your ego more and learn how do you start dismantling the rigidity of the ego, so you can use your ego to support you, to integrate in your life. That's the whole point of becoming whole. We embrace all parts of us, the ego, the shadow, and all personalities that helped us to get to this point in life. And I'm sure there are a lot of good things that the ego helped you to build, and maybe not so many good things. So it's time to be aware, to be part of this great awakening, so you can experience truly more love, more joy, more freedom every day, and you're never dependent on other people or what their outside circumstances are. So that's what I want to share with you today. Hope you have a great weekend, and I can't wait to connect with you again. Thank you so much.